the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky Southcoast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
All right, good evening. Welcome to Spooky Southcoast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the science advisor Matt Moniz. The silent assassin Matt Costa is not here tonight. He's working late. So I don't think he's going to make it in for the show tonight, Moni. It's just going to be you and I.
All right.
I think we can handle it. Especially since we had last week off from the show. So we have a lot to say. We had a great time last week at Dead of Winter. We'll talk about that coming up in a few minutes. But this is Spooky South Coast, where we talk about the paranormal each and every Saturday night. And you can hear us right here on WBSM. You can also watch us streaming video on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com. And Spooky South, I got to say, I'm liking this new design of SpookySouthCoast.com.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
It's easy to use. It's easy to get around. The slideshow feature kind of puts everything right in front of your face. You know, there's not a lot of searching, which is good for me because I know that I can get lost in a website sometimes.
It's what they call user-friendly?
It definitely is. So, and if you go on to SpookySouthCoast.com, you'll see this week's show tonight. We will be talking with Stephen Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group about the Disclosure Project and about the Disclosure Petition, Part 2 of which is currently seeking signatures on the White House website. They were able to get the first one passed through, and they got official comment from the White House on the UFO phenomena, the UFO history, what kind of documents the government might have. We'll talk with Steve a little bit about that coming up because, of course, we got the standard response that we expected to get out of the Obama administration. And that's not a political statement. That's just every administration talks about UFOs in this manner. So we'll talk about that with Steve Bassett coming up in just a little while. And we'll also talk about what Phase 2 is now of the Disclosure Petition and what you can do to help. If you go to SpookySouthCoast.com, one of the slides there is your chance to actually sign the petition, which I did earlier today. It's really simple to do. You just create an account on the whitehouse.gov site, and that allows you to sign any petition that pops up. So it literally took minutes, so if you have a few minutes, go ahead and do that. Spread the word, spread the link around. And you'll also see, too, we have a new slide up there to get the Stitcher podcast, the Stitcher app for your smartphone or for your iPad, where you can hear Spooky South Coast. The latest episode is always available, and it's really easy to use. There's no syncing, there's no downloading. You can just stream it right there on the Stitcher app on whatever device you use it for. It's free, and if you do it, if you download the Stitcher app, if you haven't already, when they ask you how you heard about Stitcher, just put in SpookySC as the code and then go play one of our episodes. You'll automatically be entered to win a $100 cash card from Stitcher. So not a bad deal. You can actually get paid to listen to Spooky South Coast.
Yeah, you can.
Which is cool because we don't even get paid to do Spooky South Coast. So I wish that I'd actually not already downloaded Stitcher so I could be eligible. I don't know. Would that make me eligible? I'm not sure. But you got a smartphone now, Moniz.
Yeah, I'm getting another one from work, too.
That's 2 chances to win. So there you go. If you win the $100, like, give me like 10% of it. Buy me a pizza or something. All right, well, we're going to talk about the paranormal here, as I said, as we do each and every Saturday night. But before we do that, I'm going to attempt to make a switch here with the iPods as I'm talking, because we're going to do a little segment that we like to do here on the show. And to do that, I have to get the other iPod because I'm not technically savvy enough to have it on both iPods. So here we go. Let's see what we can do here. Hold on. I haven't started it yet.
Oh, okay.
Come on, bad news.
Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
The Week in Weird. All right. Well, our first story, this comes out of Arizona from CBS 5 News, and this is a pretty interesting story. They obtained dozens of photos and case files of strange scenes and sightings in northeastern Arizona. Most police won't take reports like this, but about 10 years ago, officials on the Navajo reservation decided to stop the snickering and to treat these witnesses with respect and thoroughly investigate. The Navajo Nation Rangers stepped up to the plate, and retired Lieutenant John Dover explains that the Navajo Nation Rangers are a federal law enforcement resource. They manage national parks, archaeological sites, fish and wildlife services, and more as officers of the law. And over the last 10 years, they've investigated paranormal claims, including a mass flood of lights that floated over the uninhabited reservation land back in January. And they also have done research into the Bigfoot phenomena that's seen around the reservation as well. So here we have an example. I mean, we always say we want to see law enforcement pay more attention to the paranormal. Here we have one that actually does. Pretty interesting stuff, Moniz.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to see some of their official reports.
I think what would be really cool, too, is you're getting it not only from a law enforcement perspective, but you're getting it from a Native American perspective, too. So it's not just paranormal as much as it is there's also their own tribe's legend and lore playing into a lot of the phenomena that they're seeing. So what, might be a strange light/UFO sighting in another part of the country, for that area, might be, some sort of folklore tie into it. It'd be no different than, coming here and chasing, chupacabras, but they turn out to be puckwudgies.
Yeah.
So it's the region's own perspective is put on it. So yeah, I definitely think we should maybe look into getting retired Lieutenant John Dover of the Navajo Nation Rangers as a guest on the program. We can talk about some of the cases they've investigated over the years. So if you're listening, Content Director Chris Balzano, retired Lieutenant John Dover. We'll work and we'll see what we can do about that. Now here's speaking of the chupacabra sightings, and a story eerily similar to that of the chupacabra sightings of Latin America. Residents in northern Namibia, am I saying that right?
Namibia.
A lot, because they spelled it wrong in the story. Along the southwest coast of Africa are reportedly being terrorized by some kind of strange dog-pig hybrid creature, reports MSNBC. Eyewitness accounts of the alleged beast describe a mostly white animal with dog-like head and a body similar to that of a giant warthog with a broad, round, nearly hairless back and shoulders. The creature is typically spotted attacking domestic animals such as dogs and goats, and descriptions of the animal sound like some sort of genetic experiment from Moniz Island gone awry, but locals have expressed confidence that the animal is unlike anything they've ever seen before. So it's not the first time that unknown creatures have been reported in that region. In July of 2009, panic spread after a wave of unusual livestock and goat deaths were reported. Allegedly, at least 24 goats, and several, you can tell what I have on the mind, and several heads of cattle were found with their blood sucked out. Footprints of an unknown creature with dog-like feet were scattered around the bodies. When officials followed the footprints, they mysteriously stopped in an open field as if the creature had took off and vanished in midair. So, I mean, what do you think? Something that's reported as a strange dog-pig hybrid creature. And
it could be something completely new. It may not necessarily be a combination between a pig and a dog,
but I mean, this is different than the Latin American chupacabra goat sucker phenomena that we've heard about in the past, because this is in Africa, where they have a very wide assortment of different animals. Is there anything that you can think of on the African continent that would perform a similar action to a chupacabra?
Not with the description of the animal itself that they said to have seen with it.
Even description aside, I mean, something that would literally just suck all the blood out of an animal.
Well, you have vampire bats that, they're mainly found in South America and Central America and stuff like that, but I believe they also have bats similar to that in Africa. And there's also a whole host of, other insects that can drain blood, but, not like what they're describing now. Not that I'm aware of.
The strange dog-pig hybrid creature. So I think I dated her in high school. All right, and finally this week, a 95-year-old grandmother terrified her neighbors in China by climbing out of her coffin 6 days after she died. She was found motionless and not breathing in bed by her neighbor more than a fortnight. That's 2 weeks to normal people. Do you say fortnight?
On occasion.
You do?
Every couple of weeks.
That's very, very classical of you. After tripping and suffering a head injury, when she failed to wake her up, they assumed that the failed grandmother had passed away in her sleep. Recounting the daily visit recounting his daily visit to bring the elderly lady breakfast. The neighbor said, "She didn't get up, so I came to wake her up. No matter how hard I pushed her or called her name, she had no reactions. I felt something was wrong, so I tried her breath, and she was gone, but her body was still not cold." So according to tradition, the dead woman was laid out in her coffin ahead of the funeral for friends and relatives to pay their respects. The day before the funeral, the day before she was going to be buried into the ground, she arrived at the neighbor's house to find the coffin empty and the corpse gone. And as it turned out, she told villagers, "I slept for a long time. After waking up, I felt so hungry and wanted to cook something to eat, so I pushed the lid for a long time to climb out." A county hospital reportedly believes that she suffered an artificial death during which the person has no breath but the body remains warm. So that'd be a nice sight to wake up to in the morning. Walk out and your dead grandma's out there cooking you breakfast.
That's just plain creepy.
Well, I guess the good thing about it is, she realized what was going on before they buried her in the ground. So
yeah,
a few hours later, it might not have been such a happy ending to that story. But hey, I guess that's what happens. When you have those types of deaths.
Or near deaths.
Yeah, near deaths. I'm sure there's probably quite a bit of this happening in other countries where the medical system isn't quite as developed as ours, but I would think China is pretty advanced in some of their medical capabilities. Even in some smaller villages, they should kind of be able to tell if somebody's dead or not by now.
Well, that's something that's happened back in history all the way up until modern times.
Well, the good thing is, though, is if I'm ever, not breathing, you can just be sure that I'm alive.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a narcoleptic, so sometimes I may appear like I'm dead, and sometimes Moniz appears like he's dead too, but you can tell that he's alive because of the snoring.
Yeah.
So, all right, that does it for this week's edition of The Week in Weird. If you have a short story that you want to share with us, just email it to us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com, and we'll share it on the program. And the news site is going to be rebuilt on spookysouthcoast.com in the coming weeks, so we'll be able to post these stories up as the weeks go along, so you can read the actual story before we comment on them here on the show. So why don't we take a few seconds here while before we have Steve Bassett on the show to talk about the Disclosure Project and the new petition. Why don't we talk a little bit about Dead of Winter, which was a fascinating night, as always.
That was a blast. Absolute blast. At
the Lizzie Board and Bed and Breakfast. I have to say that the group that we had was outstanding. We had, even though there were some skeptics in the group, they were cool with what we were doing, and they just wanted to kind of watch and observe and participate. And
I believe they left with a little bit better understanding of what goes on.
Sure, they might not have necessarily become believers,
right,
but at least they have a little bit more respect for the approach.
Yes, definitely, for sure. The group that we had were a bunch of really, really nice, professional, as well as intelligent people. They had a lot of very intelligent questions, and to me, that's what makes it worth doing these type of events, when you get to meet good people and that have a genuine interest.
What I was most impressed about with the group is they weren't stuck in any one approach.
Right.
When we do these events through Legend Trips, we try to bring a variety of tools for people to use. We had devices like the RT EVP, we had the Mel meter, we had ghost boxes, we had the Shack Hack. People brought oviluses. You had your infrared camera.
Some people even brought thermals, yeah.
Yeah, you had your thermal. Somebody else had a thermal. I'm sorry, Andy had his infrared camera. And there was enough different pieces of technology and a lot of old school style ghost hunting equipment too, for people to try out and experience and to see if they could make a connection. And I found that, at least in the people that I've talked to so far, the evidence may have been a little bit lacking in terms of hard data from that night, but there was enough personal experiences and just cool stories coming out of it that people are still buzzing about it.
It's a great place to start with.
Yeah, you definitely know that you're going to have something going on there almost every time that you go. We had some pretty cool stuff happening on the third floor. You were down in the basement all night. How are things down there?
Actually, very quiet.
Yeah. I guess you always run the risk of bringing 25 people into the house that it's going to put a damper on some of the activity. But I found in the third floor, especially with the first group that we brought up. The later groups, there wasn't really so much going on, but the first group, we had some cool stuff coming over the Shack Hack. We had some interesting stuff coming over the Ovilus. And one of the things that impressed me was, now I've never been a big obelisk guy. You know, I understand how it works, and I understand the theory behind it, but I just never really bought into it as a worthwhile piece of equipment. After watching what happened over the last 2 Legend Trips events, I'm changing my mind. Because there's been some pretty cool stuff that can't be coincidence. For example, it was going off and it said axe murder. And then, so like, oh, all right. So there you have it. And then when Jeff knocked on the door to tell us it was time to switch floors, it said intruder. But, you know, and again, we always have strange things going on with the Shack Hack. It's up for a lot of debate. We can do a whole show someday where we just talk to paranormal investigators about what they feel about the Shack Hack. And for those who don't know, it's just simply a Radio Shack radio that has the mute pin removed so it doesn't stop on a frequency that's strong during a scan sweep. So it just keeps cycling through the stations. Supposedly spirits can grab the words that they want to use that are out there to communicate. And we had some F-bombs coming over it, which is not usual broadcast radio material. And at one point I said something about, you know, we're going to have to let you go because you're not really saying anything, and, you know, we're going to move on. And it said, Tim, thank you. So, you know, it's cool stuff. It's a cool story. It's a cool experience to have happen. One of the things that really got me going, we did have a few people with the leg lifting experience and the Jose and Olton room, which was cool. I really wanted people to experience that for themselves. But one of the things that kind of made me scratch my head a little bit was while we were on the 3rd floor in the Knowlton room, we had the door closed, and right outside the door I heard a cough. Now this is, I believe, with the 2nd group, so I assumed that was Jeff coming, because he kept messing with us every time. So I assumed it was him, so I wanted to get the jump on him. And I went over to open the door, and there was nobody there. And I looked around the whole 3rd floor, and there was nobody else up there. And it was right outside the door. I mean, we couldn't hear what was going on in the rest of the house with the door closed, so it just seemed strange to me. And there definitely wasn't any way that somebody could have gotten downstairs and the time it took me to get off the bed and go over and open the door. So just one of those things. You know, we have it happen all the time. I guess even in the afterlife, you can still catch a cold.
I guess so.
All right. Well, why don't we take a break? When we come back on the other side, we will talk to Stephen Bassett about the disclosure petition. And actually, while we're talking about Legend Trips, if you want to get involved, there's still tickets available to our April 21st Graveyard Shift at Slater Mill event, where you can hang out with the Spooky Crew and Jeff Belanger, Andy Lake, and Keith and Carl Johnson will be our featured speakers of the night. And we're going to get lectures, we're going to have dinner, we're going to have Q&A, and then, of course, hours and hours of ghost hunting at the haunted Slater Mill. So we're going to have the whole run of the property, the run of the mill, if you will. And you'll be able to investigate every corner of the place, even places that you can't get to on the normal ghost tours. So we're going to have the entire place to ourselves. I'm looking forward to getting down, you know, close to the river, getting down in the room where the river turns the turbines to the mill. I think it's going to be an outstanding night. And I don't know if you've had a chance, by the way, to check out on Facebook the photo album that our photographer, Frank Grace of Trig Photography, took. He's the guy that we're bringing along with us on some of these events, and he posted up some amazing photos from Dead of Winter. So if anybody out there attended the event, you want to purchase those tickets, you can do purchase those pictures, you can do so from Frank. But he's also going to be on hand at the Slater Mill event, taking his HDR photography. So if people want to go to the event, they have the chance to check out Frank and his work and maybe get into some of his shots. And it's amazing. I mean, even looking at myself, I'm like, I'm not an attractive person at all, but even I look cool in one of Frank's photos. So check those out as well.
All right.
And if you want to buy tickets to the Slater Mill event, you can certainly go to legendtrips.com and purchase your tickets. They're $99, and they include dinner. We bring snacks, water, soda. We're a full-service company. We give you everything you could possibly need except hold your hand when you have to go to the bathroom. And even then, if you ask nicely and don't make it weird, we'll be accommodating. All right. I'm going to try and take a commercial. Let's see if we can do this. And when we come back on the other side, we will talk more about the Disclosure Project, the Disclosure Petition. We'll find out what exactly did the Clinton administration know about UFOs, and how can we get it out of the Obama administration. So stay tuned. We will be right back with more here on Spooky Southcoast.
I have little trust in this government.
What's going on?
Now my message to Congress is,
Don't stop here.
This administration is clearly out of ideas.
And what it means to you. AM 1420, WBSM.
At Advance Auto Parts, we don't do anything just part way. We go full throttle. With a growing selection of over 350,000 parts, we have the part you need or we'll get it fast. Yeah. Advance is your one-stop. Don't run all over town because they'll have the part I need. Automotive Shangri-La. Right now, save up to $20 on Wagner thermo-quiet brake pads after mail-in rebate. Service is our best part.
Advance Auto Parts.
Void where prohibited. See store for details.
AM 1420, WBSM thinks our hard-working teachers should get the recognition they deserve. Most go above and beyond to see that area students receive the best possible education. We ask your help in paying tribute to those outstanding area teachers. Log on to WBSM.com and nominate a WBSM Bank 5 Teacher of the Month. Tell us why one teacher deserves this honor. Each month, we visit a classroom and present the award. The class wins a Domino's pizza party and tickets to Ocean's 18 Blacklight Mini Golf. And the teacher gets a special plaque from Dartmouth Gifts and Engraving, flowers from Treeland Nursery, a delicious cake from Cold Stone Creamery in Dartmouth, a gift card to A&E Jewelers, dinner compliments of Advanced Eye Centers, and a gift card to the Ruby Room, the Teacher of the Month, with Bank 5 and AM 1420, WBSM.
It blew books off shelves from 20 feet away and scared the socks off some poor librarian.
Turn on all your lights, lock the doors, and pull down the shades. Spooky South Coast is back.
This looks extraordinarily bad.
All right, welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the science advisor Matt Moniz, and we are joined on the phones by Stephen Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group, and we'll be talking about the Disclosure Petition. You can go anytime during the show to SpookySouthCoast.com, and you can sign the Disclosure Petition by clicking on the slide there in the slideshow right at the top of the page. So we will bring Steve on now. Good evening, Steve. How you doing?
Just fine, Tim. It's good to be with you.
Oh, it's great to have you back. And last time we had you on, you were talking about the first wave of the Disclosure Petition, and it seemed like that was, we'll call it a success, because you got an answer out of the Obama administration.
Sure, we did. Now, I'm curious as to how much your listener audience already knows about this petition process right now. Are they up to speed? I mean, should we give maybe a little framework on it?
Absolutely. Let's take them through it.
Okay. Essentially, what's happened here is the White House made an interesting decision back in September to initiate a petition process on the White House website itself, which was notable for a number of reasons. And immediately, PRG realized there was a rather substantial opportunity here to advance the disclosure process. Now, what's the disclosure process? Well, disclosure process is the advocacy movement that's been underway since, in earnest, since about mid-1990s. It's become a global phenomena, or global movement, rather, to get the world governments to finally acknowledge we're not alone in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much the same deal as people were trying to do back in the late 1600s. They were trying to get the Catholic Church to admit that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, that it went around the sun and all that. And of course, back then, the Church was rather intent on keeping it that way, and so a lot of people actually got killed or excommunicated or both. In order to, quote, keep all that together. But in the modern era, we have what is called the truth embargo, and that was the effort by the government to withhold the acknowledgement of the truth about this phenomenon we've been experiencing for forever, but certainly intensely since 1947. So that's the disclosure process, and the goal of the movement is to get the acknowledgement of ET presence by world governments, starting with probably the United States.
And I mean, of course, this petition process was created on the White House website because the Obama administration wanted to have this transparent government, where they thought that if if enough people wanted to know the answers to questions, they would provide them.
Well, I think, there's a transparent component, I suppose, meaning, you send us a petition and we'll get back to you. But it's also political. They're showing that they're engaging the people. They're also collecting a whole lot of email addresses,
yeah, that's
which
true too.
May come in handy. Though they do, I think, give you an option to not receive, say, further emails from the White House if you don't want to, which is appropriate. And there is a political year underway, a huge election that's going to end up being the most expensive election in history. I mean, of any elections anywhere, anytime. I mean, this will be it. So, whatever the reason, this presented an extraordinary opportunity for the disclosure movement. So, on September the 22nd, when the White House launched this We the People project at whitehouse.gov, Paradigm Research Group submitted a petition called the Disclosure Petition. And this was to set the issue up and to get a response from the White House. Under the rules, any petition that received 5,000 signatures in 30 days got a formal response from the White House, from the Obama administration. We got those signatures in about 4 days, and I think eventually ended up with about 12,000. So the response came on November the 4th. Now, this response is notable for a number of reasons, but it was heavily covered, and it was heavily covered by the media. Mm-hmm. In fact, the first disclosure petition and the White House response got more media coverage than all the other posted petitions combined, about 350 to 400. So the media is following this, and that's good. The petition was straightforward. I can hang on a second. I'll just bring it up. The initial petition, which is still up at the White House, by the way, under the responses at We the People, and has been up now for almost, I think it's approaching 5 months. And this website is viewed by people all over the world, political leaders, press, media, whatever. Mm-hmm. So the initial petition was as follows. We petition the Obama administration to, we the undersigned strongly urge the President of the United States to formally acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race and immediately release into the public domain all files from all agencies and military services relevant to this phenomenon. This is the core goal of the disclosure movement. It cuts right to the heart of the matter. It then had a couple of key websites for people to get information, etc., etc. And then the response came on November the 4th. And that response was not fully, it was not unanticipated, a little harder line than I thought they would go, but it's very notable, and let me just read you a couple of key paragraphs. It was written by a staffer in the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And this is the position of the White House at this time. Thank you for searching for ET, but no evidence yet. Thank you for signing the petition asking the Obama administration to acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. The U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet, or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public's eye. Now, this response is notable for three reasons. One, it's completely false, or at least that paragraph is. And I think most of your listeners already knew that immediately. Secondly, it's indefensibly false, and that's notable, because you can say something that's not true, but be able to defend your statement quite well. Not in this case. No member of the White House would dare want to go in front of a camera with any of the top researchers or activists and attempt to defend this statement. They would just be an unfair match and would not go well for them. So, well and good. And then three, the response itself has made some history. It is the first time the White House, the administration, the executive branch of the United States government has ever put in writing position on this issue. That's highly notable.
Even though it's not necessarily the truth, at least they
yeah, whatever. But it's a position. It's in writing. It is the administration's position. The government has steadfastly avoided putting anything in writing on this issue where possible. And what I mean by that, in terms of its formal statements about what is going on, they commissioned a Condon report. There was a Blue Book study that was done, and there was something written there. Fine, and then they shut everything down. So there have been things from the government written about this, but not what I would call formal government positions, formal statements, and certainly not from the White House. And so since 1969, what they did was try to limit their response to this whole issue and everything that was turning up at their door to a simple letter from the Air Force saying, and many people have gotten this letter, including some people in your audience, you put a query into any part of the government, it gets referred to the Air Force. Air Force comes back with, thank you for your query. We no longer investigate this phenomena, and and I'm paraphrasing, whatever this phenomena is, we no longer investigate. It doesn't pose a threat. That's it. This is important because if you put something in writing, you have to defend it, and that's what they've done here. They've created a stationary target, a formal statement that they can't run from. They can't deny they've said it, and it's not going anywhere, and so we can go after the statement to the extent that we wish, and so can the press. This was the purpose of the petition. Not to get Obama disclosed a couple of weeks later. That was not going to happen. But to get this position. They had the option of not responding at all, but I think they were in a corner because had they not responded to the petition, I think it would have looked awfully suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So they put out a hard line. It's about 9 paragraphs, and that's it. Okay. So what next? Well, what next is we go after this statement. If we break it, if we show it to be false, then we really and essentially break the truth embargo itself. But in order to do that, we need the media. Now, the media has stayed out of this as part of the truth embargo, which was fully institutionalized by the 80s, meaning you didn't have to call up any newspapers or whatever and tell them, don't look too hard at this, don't write anything really serious. It was already established.
Yeah, they kind of already knew, yeah.
Absolutely. Just like the press knew that you didn't write about President Kennedy's affairs. It was just understood.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a protocol, right? You don't talk about that. Now, of course, the presence of extraterrestrials engaged in the human race is several billion times more important than the President Kennedy's affairs, but nevertheless, same concept. So, getting the press involved is critical here. And that's why this petition process is so important. There are petitions all over the Internet. They're everywhere. And that's wonderful. It lends itself to that. But this petition is not sitting on some obscure website run by an activist or researcher. This petition, the first one, has been sitting up on the White House website continuously since September the 22nd. You know, toward November, December, January, February. So 5 months. Heading towards 6 months. For anybody in the world to read, including members of the military and the intelligence community. So, and it is the position of the White House. It was issued by the White House's science office. So this is now a newsworthy story, without question. And the press covered it with hundreds of articles around the world. Okay, good. So, what happens next? Well, what happens next is that on February the 23rd, 10 days ago, Paradigm Research Group introduced Disclosure Petition II. Now, this is a much more complicated and intense petition than the first one. The first one framed the issue and got the response. The second one is coming after the issue, coming after the response, rather, to draw in the press. And in order to do that, PRG reached back to one of the most important political events of the 20th century that was not covered by the media. I mean, just wasn't covered at all. And I'm referring to the Rockefeller Initiative.
And for those unfamiliar?
For those unfamiliar, this was a 3-year effort by one of the sons of John D. Rockefeller, a billionaire, environmentalist, philanthropist, out-of-the-box thinker who supported research by John Mack, Colin Andrews, and others. Pretty good guy, actually. I know some of the Rockefellers are not viewed favorably by many of your audience, but they would have liked Lawrence, I think. He approached Bill Clinton's administration beginning on March the 29th of 1993 because he was the first post-Cold War president. Cold War was over, and thus the major barrier to ending this truth embargo and bringing the truth out to the American people was passed, and he wanted to get going on it. So he approached the administration, and this initiative went on for approximately 3 years, a little less than 3 years, only 4 and 5, it's not 2.5 years, really. A lot of people were involved. A lot of people in the administration knew about it. Some of them were involved in it. Most everybody is still alive. We've lost about 4 or 5. And then it faded out. It faded out for 2 reasons. The Clinton administration got tied up in a barrage of attacks, mostly from the right. Probably the most unprecedented coordinated attacks on the presidency ever. That kept Clinton bottled up pretty well and didn't give him a lot of latitude to move, particularly on something of this magnitude. Those attacks never relented, and ultimately, while most of the initial attacks resulted in nothing through Brigade, Travelgate, Pork Belly Gate, and Whitewatergate, eventually, though, they did have a scandal with Monica Lewinsky, which then they pursued until impeachment, but no conviction. So the Clinton administration had a very interesting history. I believe there's a connection between that history, the history of the attacks, and the Rockefeller Initiative. That's another story. So by fall of '96, it had gone about as far as it can. Plus, Rockefeller was getting quite old, and so his health was starting to decline. So it just faded away. He had no support from his family on this, by the way. They didn't want him to have anything to do with this. I know this because I talked with his daughter. So it fades away. The press never covered it. And so as far as everyone is concerned, let's just pretend this never happened. And in the 19 years since the initiative began on March 29, 1993, not a single principal government person involved in it has ever said anything publicly about it. Nor has any member of the press ever asked one of these principals a question about it, which is actually quite remarkable. Okay, well and good, but that initiative, because of the people involved, has been, ever since it was launched, probably the Achilles heel of the truth embargo. So attempts were made to get the news media, political media, to break out of the embargo mode and engage this issue. The first attempts were made in the year 2000, 4 years after the initiative ended. And this was generated because Canadian researcher Grant Cameron was building a website called presidentialufo.com, which is still up and going. It's the largest compilation of information in the world connecting the UFO ET issue to U.S. presidents.
It's a great site.
It's a great site, and in order to develop his Clinton section, he very cleverly filed a Freedom of Information Act request to Clinton's Office of Science and Technology Policy, or regarding the OSTP under Clinton in that period, for anything they had in the files regarding UFOs, ETs, and Rockefeller. And for reasons we may never know, he got back 1,000 pages of documents virtually unredacted. I'm surprised at this. Somebody either made a mistake or somebody wanted those documents out, because contrary to what people believe, you can file FOIA request until hell freezes over. And if the government doesn't want you to have something, it's not going to give it to you.
Right.
All right? You can get documents if they want to release them. So the position of the government is, look, we'd rather just keep everything secret, but if you file some stuff and we don't care about it, we'll give you something. You have to run through all these hoops. That's kind of the general view. They tried to make it better. Clinton tried to make it better. Mm-hmm. But if you really want something that's going to be a problem for us, you're not going to get it. It's national security. That's the ballgame. So essentially the FOIA road has been a very tough road, and a number of people have traveled it for many years, and I don't envy them at all. But on occasion you get something by accident. But in this case, it was surprising. He got the goods. And those pages confirm the initiative. And now what to do? Well, what Grant did is send me a copy. I made a couple of copies, and I ran them down and presented them to the Washington Post, who wanted nothing to do with them. Grant drew on those documents to create the Clinton narrative, and so a great deal of the narrative of this story is at the website now in the Clinton section at presidentialufo.com. I put up a Rockefeller Initiative section at paradigmresearchgroup.org, where roughly 9 years ago, I put up thumbnails and the actual documents for about 173 of the key documents in chronological order, so any reporter could just go right through it very quickly, just right on the internet. And over the next 10 years, both Grant and primarily I put out a number of press releases in various ways, various subjects, where the Rockefeller Initiative links were there and it was raised to the media. And in that time, they have not touched it. Want anything to do with it. All right, that's truth embargo. So, all you can do is put this out there. If the press is going to continue to go along with the embargo, you're kind of stuck until President Obama made the decision to launch the petition project to We the People at the White House website. So what has happened is Disclosure Petition II is now bringing the Rockefeller Initiative back, and it's putting it right on the White House website for anyone in the world to read, putting it in front of the press as a mainstream newsworthy article event, because obviously it is part of the White House initiative, and it's on the White House website, so it's in play. And that's the way the media works. If something is in play, if the editors and reporters sort of understand that in the context that is approachable story, they will approach it, sure, even if it's about extraterrestrials.
Well, what I found interesting about this second wave here of the petition is that you said for the first part of it, to just get them to comment on it required 5,000 signatures. Mm-hmm. Now you need 25,000 signatures to go to the next level. Is that something that was directly related to this petition, or did they just change policy and make it so that you had to have 5 times as many signatures?
No, I'm pretty sure that as they felt their way along in this process, which they're in uncharted territory here somewhat. And they didn't over-promote it either. I mean, there was not a lot of promotion of this by the White House, the administration, very little, because they just didn't know what to expect. And as it was, they received well above 10,000 petitions, I think, in the first 3 weeks. And so they realized, Lord, if we may end up having to respond to several thousand petitions here, and that would be pretty formidable. And so they realized that they put too small a number. So they increased it, I think, was around October 8, 9, 10, which they had the right to do under their own rules. They increased the threshold to 25,000, which dramatically decreased the number of petitions being submitted and the number of petitions that are set for responses. I think the total number of petitions is now between 10 and 20,000, of which about 450 got the necessary 150 signatures to be posted. And then of those 400, I think about 75 had the necessary signatures to get a response. And so far, the White House has responded to, let's see, I think it's about 53. Let me just check. 53. And in some cases, they're grouping petitions together that are essentially addressing the same issue. So as you can see, it's a relatively limited process so far, but one of the 53 responses, of course, was to Disclosure Petition 1. Now the question is, can we get a response to Disclosure Petition 2? Because Disclosure Petition 2 is going to be a really substantial challenge for the administration. This is not going to be so easy, but it gets even better than that. This could be a breakthrough moment. This could be the there's so many analogies I could use, but this could be the move on the chessboard that sets up checkmate on the truth embargo finally after 65 years. And let me make the case for that. I think some of your listeners are starting to sort of see the picture, but we need to go a little further than that. So what I'm going to do is read the petition that is sitting at the White House website right now. If you go to We the People, if you go to whitehouse.gov and We the People, it's the under just open petitions. It's the 11th one down. Or you can go to the information hub for all of this, which is disclosurepetition.info. Mm-hmm. Disclosurepetition.info, and you will find a lot about this process as well as the direct link to this petition. Go straight there. All right, this is what's in play right now. You only have 120 characters for the title and 84 characters, not words, but characters for the description, and so it's very tight, and you have to craft as much into that space as you can. So there's a lot I could have put in, but here's what's sitting there for all the world to read right now. We petition the Obama administration to immediately investigate UFO ET disclosure efforts during the Clinton administration, the Rockefeller Initiative. The Obama administration has formally stated the U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. If true, what was Clinton's Office of Science and Technology Policy investigating from March of 1993 to October 1996 in concert with billionaire Clinton friend Lawrence Rockefeller? And now the killer paragraph, the one that could launch 1,000 ships. Those who knew and have not spoken publicly of this initiative include President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Obama Transition Chairman John Podesta, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, Vice President Al Gore, and Governor Bill Richardson. These people are somewhat well known.
I would say so.
And then it finishes up with confirming documents and then 2 website links. One is to presidentialufo.com, the Clinton section. By the way, you can also download all of these documents at the presidentialufo.site. And then one to the Paradigm Research Group, Rockefeller Initiative section, where 173 of the key documents are thumbnailed and presented in chronological order, and along with some other key information. It's very visual. It's very compact. It's designed for and make it easy for any reporter or editor to go right to it in 30 minutes. Pretty much have the idea, have it down.
All right. Well, we are coming up on the end of the first hour of the program, but we're going to talk more with our guest Stephen Bassett on the other side about the Disclosure Petition II. We'll find out more about just the process, and there's 4,919 signatures on the petition right now. There's another 20,081 to go. So you can go to the website for it, which is disclosurepetition.info, or you can go right to SpookySouthcoast.com, where we have it linked up as well, and you can sign it during the break. When we come back, too, we'll also throw open the phone lines if anybody has any questions and wants to ask some more questions of the Rockefeller Initiative about just the response from the Obama administration and anything else coming up here in the second hour. But we are going to take a few minutes break for the news, and when we come back on the other side, we'll talk more about this topic, because it's one of those things where people always say, nobody can make a difference. When you're going up against the government, what can one person do? Well, one person can sign their name to the signature, and that can make all the difference in the world. So just stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a few minutes here on Spooky South Coast. Again, during the break, just go to the website, click on the slide, and you can have your chance to sign up for the Disclosure Petition II. Just takes a few seconds, and literally you'll be able to sign it within 2 minutes of logging on to the website.
Pete Braley takes you to work. Ken Pittman brings you home. Every weekday, AM 1420, WBSM.
says National Weather Service's Ron Presvalinsky, who was there.
First supercell spawned a tornado. It caused EF4 damage. We're estimating wind speeds around 175 miles an hour.
ABC News meteorologist Ginger Z in Henryville.
We had the opportunity to go with the owner of a restaurant that had the bus into it, so it impaled the restaurant, and we talked with him and his friends, his wife, who were in the basement, and it was such a wild story because they go to the basement, minutes later the tornado hits, and these people hear all of the commotion. They go up, and there is a bus sitting where they were at a table.
Ohio Governor John Kasich on the cleanup and recovery efforts.
People that live here are resilient, God-fearing, they're tough, and we're knocked down, but we're not knocked out.
Mitt Romney's grabbed another victory in Washington State's Republican presidential caucuses. That's his fourth straight campaign win ahead of the 10 Republican presidential primaries this week on Super Tuesday. Romney here being greeted by cheering supporters in Cincinnati, Ohio a few hours ago. ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd.
The first thing to watch is Ohio. It's the place, not Michigan, in the Midwest, a key battleground for the general election. If Rick Santorum can win that, he has got life back in his candidacy. If Mitt Romney wins that state, it begins to end this nomination process.
The anger in Afghanistan over last week's Koran burnings could lead to at least 5 U.S. military personnel getting disciplinary reviews, according to U.S. military officials. Rush Limbaugh has issued an apology to the Georgetown University student that he called a prostitute this past week. The woman had come out publicly in favor of insurance companies covering birth control for cancer-fighting purposes. You're listening to ABC News.
One thing I've learned on my journey to help save people money on car insurance is that folks across the country like convenience. And what could be more convenient than visiting Geico.com, where you can manage your policy, pay your bill online, just about anything you need. And it's open 24/7. It's kind of like popping into the ultimate convenience store. Except we save people money. And we don't have beef jerky.
For a free rate quote, visit Geico.com to see how much you could save. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
It's deer season, and time for huge savings on John Deere compact tractors, utility tractors, and hay tools. Get 0% financing for 72 months, or choose from big cashback offers. Hurry into your John Deere dealer soon. Offer ends April 30th, 2012, subject to approved credit on John Deere financial installment plans. See your participating John Deere dealer for details.
For great deals on legendary, reliable John Deere equipment, visit your local dealer today or go to myjohndeeredealer.com to see current offers and find a participating dealer near you.
BP says it's reached a tentative out-of-court settlement with about 100,000 plaintiffs, the largest group claiming losses from the Gulf oil disaster of 2010. People can take what the settlement offers or opt out and make a claim directly to BP. More from ABC's Matt Gutman.
We're talking about BP dipping into the $20 billion fund that it promised President Obama. So there's about $14 billion left in that fund. BP says it expects to pay at least $8 billion to the thousands of claimants who still have not yet been paid.
Children who may have taken breast cancer treatment medication mistakenly given by a Chatham, New Jersey pharmacy instead of prescribed meds likely won't suffer any health problems, says a pharmaceutical expert. CVS has apologized. More young girls are putting their lives online, and many psychologists are wondering if it's creating new distress.
A number of young girls have been posting Am I Pretty and Am I Ugly videos on YouTube.
A lot of people call me ugly, and I think I am ugly.
That's Kendall. She posted that more than a year ago.
All of my friends that are girls, they're just like, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, you're so beautiful.
It's received 4 million views and more than 100,000 anonymous and often hateful responses. One psychologist says in a world obsessed by looks, the comments can play into a person's sense of self-worth and should be seen as a new form of self-mutilation, along with cutting and eating disorders.
I'm like pretty or not.
Deirdre Bryant, ABC News.
This is ABC News.
Does your roof need replacing, your house need cleaning, or maybe you're ready to update your kitchen? Big or small, whatever your home improvement need, log on to home.servicemagic.com. ServiceMagic is a free online resource with instant access to pre-screened remodelers, maids, handymen, painters, and many other home contractors. It's easy and it's free. Just go to home.servicemagic.com. home.servicemagic.com. That's home.servicemagic.com.
Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
your home for local news and local talk. AM 1420, WBSM.
Welcome to Spooky Southcoast.
Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky South Coast with your hosts Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
All right, welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg, along with science advisor Matt Moniz, the silent assassin Matt Costa, stuck at work tonight. So he's probably listening to the show as he's finishing up work, I hope. And if you want to listen to the show, of course, you can do so anytime. SpookySouthCoast.com is a place to find out everything about the program. You can also go to YouTube and get all of our YouTube archives now, which is a cool feature that we have. Every show that's ever been recorded on Spooky TV is now up there for your viewing, so please subscribe so that we can have more viewers and more subscribers than 30-odd minutes, because I'm putting out that challenge. And and then, of course, you can get the show through iTunes, wherever podcasts are found. We had an issue a few weeks ago where iTunes wasn't distributing the podcast, but I fixed it. Somebody brought it to my attention immediately, and we got it all fixed. And then, of course, the coolest way to get the show, of course, is through the Stitcher app. If you just download the Stitcher app for your smartphone or for your iPad, it's free, doesn't cost anything. You can sign up to receive Spooky South Coast automatically every time there's a new episode. It'll go right to your Stitcher favorites list, and you can just open up the app whenever you're ready to listen to it, and it's right there waiting for you. No downloading, no syncing. It doesn't take up any space on your phone. It's the easiest way to do it. So all you have to do is download the app from wherever you get your apps, for your smartphone, for your iPad, whatever you're using. And when it asks you how you found out about the show, enter in Spooky SC, SPOOKY SC, not case sensitive, so just type it in however you want to type it in, Spooky SC, and then what will happen is, once you've typed in that, and then you go and you listen to our show or any show on the Stitcher app, then you're automatically entered in a drawing to win a $100 cash card from Stitcher. So get paid to listen to our show. Can't get any better than that. And of course, it's right there for you. So even if you don't win, you still win, because you get our show and plenty of other awesome podcasts every week delivered right to your phone. Yeah. I use Stitcher all the time. I listen to all kinds of things. I listen to Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, and there's our friend Darkness Radio. They're there. Coast to Coast AM. They're there. Tons of paranormal content if that's what you're into. So just check it out. Stitcher is the name of the app. Stitcher.com is the website, and if you want to get to our direct link to it, Stitcher.com/SpookySC. And it's linked up right on the front page of SpookySouthCoast.com, as is the link to the petition, the Disclosure Petition II. Direct link is right up there on SpookySouthCoast.com if you want to sign up. And I see the tally going up here for the number of signatures. So that's an awesome thing. So let's bring back our guest tonight, who's joining us, Stephen Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group, who is behind this initiative here of trying to get this petition. It needs about 20,000 more signatures. And now, if you've only had it up there, Steve, since February 23rd, and you've already got about 5,000 signatures there. So I'm thinking the goal of 25,000 is going to be hopefully easily reachable.
Not easily. Not easily, I'm afraid, because the pace that it's on right now would only generate about 14 to 15,000. Remember, we only have 30 days. Mm-hmm. And the way this works, it's as of midnight, March 24, there's only 24,999. The petition will be deleted, and there will be no White House response. So there's a lot of work to be done. I've already done approximately 20 interviews specifically on this second petition, and I've got 10 booked for March, and probably we'll do another 10 before the dust clears. I am going to be interviewed by CNBC on Monday for a release later that week, but nevertheless, there's hundreds of hours of going into this, and all of this is, we can do that, but what we can't do is sign for people, and they have to take the few minutes it takes to support this petition and tell other people about it.
I was going to say, it's not just signing, it's also sharing it. I mean, sending
Absolutely.
it through Facebook and Twitter and all these different easily reachable ways to get a hold of people now and to spread the word.
Yeah, exactly. Some people also have blogs. They have email lists that they work with. At disclosurepetition.info, they can find banners they can use to link directly to the petition or to disclosurepetition.info. So, sign it and get 20 people to sign it, and this will happen. But it's still not a done deal by any means. So, with that in mind, let me again further describe to people and try to get people to know why this is so important, why it could be the breakthrough maneuver here, the breakthrough move in the chess game we've been playing with the U.S. government on this for a good 15 years, and in some respects for 6.5 decades. So what we have is the Rockefeller Initiative Disclosure Petition II up on the site. Now, here is where things get interesting. And let me put this in perspective. In the roughly the same time frame that Rockefeller began the approach and the initiative with the Office of Science and Technology Policy under Clinton. His wife, Hillary, invited a friend of hers, Gene Houston, over a few times for lunch at the White House. And not surprisingly, anything that goes on at the White House, anything that goes on in the executive branch is considered news. And I don't think anybody denies that. Just about. I think it was big news when Bush was doing some t-ball there in the garden and whatever.
Yep.
And big news when Michelle Obama planted an organic garden. But what in this case happened is that Hillary had Gene Houston come over. Gene Houston was a world-famous prognosticator, I guess you could say a psychic, mainstream psychic, if there is such a thing. And they had a little fun. They did some role-playing. I think Gene Houston played Eleanor Roosevelt, and Hillary talked with her as if she was Eleanor Roosevelt, just as from a role-playing game to kind of get a sense of how she would be, how she would conduct the role of being First Lady. Eleanor Roosevelt, one of the most famous First Ladies in history, one of the strongest. And Hillary was certainly considered one of the strongest First Ladies of any presidency. So nothing wrong with this. However, the press learned about it. And it was a huge story. Oh, this is big news. This went around the world. Hillary is channeling Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, a billionaire Rockefeller approaches the administration, and for 3 years, there are 2.5 years, there's an initiative going on involving a lot of people, involving report studies, meetings at Rockefeller's ranch to get Bill Clinton to release all the UFO files and maybe grant amnesty to witnesses that come forward. And this is no news? Nothing to write about there? That's all your listeners need to know about the truth embargo and its existence and its effectiveness.
Well, and you can even take away from that the whole White House Clinton aspect of it and just point out that you're talking about a Rockefeller who is, as you said, not somebody that the family was supportive of what he was doing. I mean, we love gossip amongst our, American royalty, and of course the Rockefellers are considered just that.
Without the truth embargo, this is a massive story. With the truth embargo, they don't talk about it at all. But, see, there's a problem here. Let's run through the people that knew about this or were actually directly engaged. President Bill Clinton knew about it. How do we know that? Well, for one thing, actually we know about it for a lot of reasons, but for one thing, he, as part of the initiative, tasked his key advisor, John Podesta, to, under presidential directive, to redesign the way that documents were being declassified and made available to the public so that millions more could be declassified, since they were making, the government had gotten in the habit of making everything classified, and hard to get them out again. And so this was a reformist move that Podesta has talked about, has been praised for, was in the news, though no mention of UFOs or Rockefeller. We know he did that. We know that he asked his good friend, Webster Hubbell, who he appointed as Associate Attorney General at Justice, to actually make some queries about UFOs at Justice. See if Justice knew anything. And even elsewhere in the government, I think, pretty sure that Webster Hubbell contacted NORAD. I think he contacted the NRO. Of course, he was completely stonewalled. But he did this, and we know he did this because he wrote a book called Friends in High Places, where he talks about it, where he mentions it. Then in 1995, Clinton went to Ireland, gave to a very appreciative public there, spoke at an open forum, and out of nowhere, without being prompted at all, he mentions he received a letter from a young boy wanting to know if aliens had crashed at Roswell, New Mexico in July. And he said he didn't know, but he wanted to know. That's interesting. And of course, he also went and met with Rockefeller in 1995 at Rockefeller's ranch. Hillary accompanied him, and they spoke privately about this issue. So he was involved. What's happened to him? Well, he's a major player in the Democratic Party. He's a key advisor and probably behind the scenes. He's probably critical to Obama's re-election. Goes around the world advising countries and nations. Okay. What about Hillary Clinton? We know she was involved because two of the documents say so directly. And I'll read those to you. Read those to your audience a little bit later. She's actually in the documents referred to as being informed and being involved, including not only her, but her staff.
Wow.
Now, what happened to her? Well, she went on to run for president and came very close to being the president of the United States. Now she's just the Secretary of State. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to John Podesta? John Podesta was a key aide to Clinton. We know that he was tasked to improve the release of classified documents as part of, I think, a response to Clinton, to what Rockefeller was trying to do. But then he became the chief of staff to the president in the second term during the impeachment, during the toughest times, very close to the president. After Bill Clinton left office on January the 20th, 2001, about 18 months later, the same John Podesta walked into the National Press Club as part of a press conference that was given there, and he spoke first. And at that time, October 22nd, 2002, he called for the release of all UFO files in government hands. Exactly what Rockefeller wanted Clinton to do. He didn't mention Rockefeller. He didn't mention the initiative. And he said it's because the people have a right to know, and it's the law. You can actually see him doing this. There are numerous YouTube videos. Just do a YouTube video search on Podesta, Podesta UFO. You can see it. We're trying to get our hands on the full 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll eventually have that, and it'll be up on YouTube. But then he came back to a press conference, a similar press conference, in October of 2003, a year later, and said it again. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened to John Podesta? Well, he went on to be selected by Obama to be the head of his transition team that helped pick the Obama administration. And then, because we have seen the White House logs, they were released, he was the most frequent visitor to the White House in the first 90 days. And shortly after he called the second time for the release of all UFO files, he founded the Center for American Progress, which is now the most important and powerful progressive think tank in Washington, in the country. He's a major advisor to the Democratic Party. Gee, interesting. Well, what happened to Leon Panetta? Leon Panetta was the chief of staff to Clinton during the Rockefeller Initiative, the whole thing. And I can assure you the chief of staff knows everything that goes on in the White House and the immediate offices. Everything. Now, we have no record that he was directly involved, nor has he said anything. But he knew about it, and of course has never said a word. What happened to Leon? Well, he became, under Obama, the head of the CIA. And then he left that job, and now he's a Secretary of Defense. Rather important person. And then there's Vice President Al Gore. Al Gore was one of the most active vice presidents. He was very close to the Clintons. He certainly knew about the Rockefeller Initiative. What happened to him? Well, he ran for president, if I recall, and came within a few hundred votes of being president.
He actually won.
Some think he won.
Yeah.
He then went on to win a Nobel Prize, and he goes around the world advising nations and corporations on how to handle their affairs. He's considered a very important person. And then we have Governor Bill Richardson. Now, Bill Richardson besides being a great politician, he was a good friend of the Clintons. And during the Rockefeller Initiative, he was in Congress. And we believe he knew about it, pretty sure he knew about it. Then he was appointed Clinton Secretary of Energy. And then, when Obama comes in, he taps him to be the Secretary of Commerce. But he doesn't take that job. He ends up remaining the governor of New Mexico. But something else he did, when about a little less than a year after Podesta calls for the UFO files, in 2004, Richardson writes a foreword to a book, the Roswell Dig Diaries. And in that foreword, this former Marine pilot and governor of New Mexico states, necessary, if somebody wants, I'll go and actually read it. Point is, he states that the explanation for Roswell doesn't hold up, that we don't really know the truth yet about it, and we need to reinvestigate Roswell because the people can handle the truth. Now, that's interesting because, see, the U.S. Air Force had made it absolutely clear what happened to Roswell. There was a mogul balloon and crash test dummies. That's it, case closed. So he just called his own, the Air Force a liar. That was 2004. Now, what happened after that? Well, he ran for president, of course. And he was considered a very possible pick to be the vice presidential pick, and might have been the vice presidential pick if Hillary had won. But, so the only person that is, well, and then I mentioned Webster Hubbell, who we're pretty sure knew about the initiative, and he was tasked to look in the UFO question. He wrote about it in the Roswell Dig Diaries, but he didn't refer to the Rockefeller Initiative. And he is not a factor here. He is not a major player on the stage now. The people I've mentioned are. They're about as major as it gets. Right? And so what this petition has done is put it right under the nose of the press that 3 people who ran for president, 2 almost became president, and someone who was president, and the current Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense were actually involved in a billionaire Rockefeller's effort to end the truth embargo in the 1990s, and they don't feel that they should ever have to talk about it, ever be asked a question about it. It doesn't matter. It didn't happen. Go away. Don't ask, don't tell. That's what's being stuck under the press's nose right now on the White House website. And if the number of signatures starts to approach 25,000, the press, which is following this, is going to realize that there's going to have to be a White House response, and that means the story gets much more significant, and they're going to take closer attention, and they're going to start possibly, very likely, going to the websites that are mentioned in the petition and starting to read those documents and confirm everything that I've just said. And that may launch one of the biggest news frenzies of all time, and that's the end of the truth embargo. So what we have now is potentially the end of this 65-year charade could be at hand if 25,000 of the nearly 240 million people, adults in America, who have stated through the polls that they believe the government's not telling the truth about this, if just 25,000 of them will take a couple minutes to go and sign this petition. That's how important this all is.
And what's the most important about it is the way that it's been worded here, and the way that you've attacked the issue here in the second half of the petition is that there has to be a more elaborate, a more direct response, not only from the administration, but then once the administration is forced to comment on it, then these people that you mentioned, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Bill Richardson, Al Gore, then they have to respond. They don't have to respond to a question about it when it's coming from even one reporter, but they do have to respond to it when it's coming from, when it's based on a statement being made by the Obama administration in the White House.
I wouldn't go that far. Put it this way. If they're not asked anything, they're not going to say a word. But if the press does ask them about it, there's almost no way they cannot respond, and there's almost nothing they can say that won't cause real serious issues here.
Well, we've seen them dance around the issue before, but I mean, if
not this time.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nowhere to dance. I mean, yeah, if you give somebody some dancing room, they'll dance, but not this time. The documents are on the web. Let me go further. Let me now give your audience a little broader picture of this initiative, and to see this is no trivial matter. The key principals on the government side, as I mentioned, were Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Dr. John Gibbons, who is also never spoken publicly. Obviously, he was involved in it. He's retired. I kind of view him more of a private person now. That's why his name is not in that petition. Of course, John Podesta and Webster Hubbell. Now, the people that knew about it, I call them the Watchers. That was Al Gore, Leon Panetta, Bill Richardson. But there were some additional principles that intersected this issue. The issue reached out and touched them. One was former Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird. He's alive. Then Senator Claiborne Pell, who's, by the way, a great friend of this issue and did as best he could to try to advance this issue and deserves a lot of credit, which he's not received. He's passed. Senator Patty Murray, she's alive. Marie Bootsy Galbraith, the wife of Ambassador Galbraith, she's alive. Actually, Bootsy should not be in that section. I just realized she should be in the private principal section. I'm going to correct that. And then Secretary of Air Force Sheila Widnall, and then Representative Stephen Schiff. Let me mention Stephen Schiff. This is another example of somebody who did something about it. Right? In other words, this initiative is going on, and it helped him to make a decision to take some action. I mentioned what Clinton did. I mentioned what Podesta did, Richardson did. Stephen Schiff was a Republican, conservative, good guy representative from New Mexico and a former Air Force officer, good man. And he had a lot of constituents that wanted him to try to get information about Roswell. And unlike just about everybody in Congress right now, with a few exceptions, he actually took his job seriously. He wasn't bought by any group, and he actually tried to serve his constituents' request and started making queries to try to get information and records regarding Roswell from his position as a member of Congress. Not surprisingly, he was stonewalled. But he was more than stonewalled. They kind of run him around, where Agency A says, oh, no, we don't have it, go to B. Agency B says, no, we don't have it, it's over at A. And A says, well, maybe try C. And then you go to C and says, no, you should go to B. He wasn't happy about this, and he started going public. He actually publicly complained. He went on a number of television shows, including Larry King. Well, I can assure you that the NRO and the Air Force and the CIA and so forth were not happy about this. The Air Force, it could have been the Army. I have to clarify that, but either one. I guess as a way of getting out from under what seemed to be a bit of an embarrassing critique, did come back to him with a response to one of his requests. He was trying to get he had requested the phone records under congressional now. Remember, this is not an FOIA. This is under congressional request. It's a different ballgame. From Roswell during the first 2 weeks of July, and I can assure you those would have been very, very interesting phone records. Incoming and outgoing calls. And so the Air Force did respond and said, we lost them.
Oh.
So, hey, we responded. We don't got them. We lost them. Schiff talked about that. So there's another example of one of the principles coming forward. As it happens, not that long after Representative Stephen Schiff had publicly complained about the way the government was responding to these legitimate requests by a member of Congress, he developed a rather unusual squamous cancer of his outer ear. I've had several squamous cancers removed. They're generally not a problem. This apparently was the squamous cancer from hell, and the doctors could not get on it. and it moved into his inner ear, into his brain, and he passed away in office. Now, the private people that were involved in this, right, effort that went on for 2.5 years included aforementioned Marie Galbraith, wife of Ambassador Galbraith, researcher Don Berliner, researcher Antoni Huneeus, researcher Robert Teets, researcher Linda Moulton Howe, researcher Colin Andrews, skeptic researcher Carl Flock, involved because his wife worked for Schiff, and then Dr. John Mack, Dr. Leo Sprinko, Dr. Stephen Greer, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, Dr. Jacques Vallée. Carl Flock has passed, Mack has passed. The rest are alive, as are Laird, Murray, Widnall, Galbraith, Gore, Panetta, Richardson, and then the key 4 principals in the public sector. Lawrence Rockefeller, who has passed, his attorney Henry Diamond, who is alive, the director of the Human Potential Foundation and the key player in this, Dr. C.B. Scott Jones, formerly an Army intelligence officer, and his right-hand man, Richard Farley. That's a whole lot of people alive that could easily answer questions about this if the press actually ask any, which the press doesn't do yet. But again, are we starting to get the scope of this? I think your listeners are starting to get the scope. But just so they can have a little taste of history. And by the way, another way we know that the Clintons responded was that they met with Rockefeller at his ranch in 1995. I think this was after Clinton had mentioned that comment in Ireland, but I'm not positive. We have the photos of them there and so forth. We have some news articles, and those are up on the websites as well. But here's a taste of history for your audience. Let me read an historical document to you. It will be seen as such in due course. It is the memo that initiated the Rockefeller Initiative. It was sent by Rockefeller's attorney, Henry Diamond, to the head of the OSTP at that time, Dr. John Gibbons. It was sent through Gibbons' assistant, Mike Kowalik. And it is regarding a request for a meeting with Dr. Gibbons for Lawrence S. Rockefeller to be had on April 12th or April 13th, 1993. This is dated March 29. And I invite your listeners to listen to the controlled, balanced language here. This is a formal approach. This is not some UFO person running at the administration trying to stir the pot. This is a billionaire, serious man, friend of the Clintons, who is trying to get the administration to move appropriately and get this issue resolved. Note the tempered language. Lawrence S. Rockefeller, who is a leading U.S. conservationist, businessman, and philanthropist, is anxious to have a brief meeting with Dr. Gibbons to discuss the potential availability of government information about unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. As one who has had a long time interest in environmental and spiritual issues, Mr. Rockefeller, with other leading citizens, is planning to make an approach to President Clinton on this subject. Prior to such an approach, Mr. Rockefeller would appreciate the opportunity of discussing the issues with Dr. Gibbons in order to make this communication to the President as useful as possible. Now listen carefully to these next sentences. The basic message to the President is that there is a belief in many quarters that the government has long held classified information regarding UFOs which has not been released, and that the failure to do so has brought about unnecessary suspicion and distrust. Many believe that the release of such information, if it exists on a basis consistent with national security considerations, would be a significant gesture which would increase confidence in government. The meeting would take no more than 45 minutes to an hour. Mr. Rockefeller would be accompanied by Scott Jones, president of the Human Potential Foundation, and Henry Diamond, a Washington attorney. And thus begins the Rockefeller Initiative. And if people go to the Rockefeller Initiative section at the Paradigm Research Group, they can review about 173 or 4 documents in chronological order of the 1,000 pages that Grant Cameron obtained in 2000, as well as some documents he got from the Clinton Library a few years back. Now, just to drive this point home, given that the person involved is very likely going to run for the presidency in 2016 and have control of the United States nuclear arsenal and the fate of the American people in her purview, let me read two other documents that a news reporter or an editor who haven't destroyed their brain by sniffing glue would realize is one of a major news story. All right? Let's move ahead to late 1995. The initiative had been going on for 18 months. And at that time, Lawrence's attorney, Henry Diamond, sent a letter, brief note, to Dr. Jack Gibbons at the OSTP. And let me read it. Self-explanatory. From 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York. Dear Jack, November 1, 1995. Attached are a draft letter to the President, which Lawrence has been discussing with Mrs. Clinton and her staff. And two, a draft report on the best evidence about UFOs. This would be the evidence that the current OSTP says doesn't exist. Returning, Lawrence thinks that it is perhaps timely to send a letter to the President. We think the best evidence report, although we haven't reviewed it in detail or analyzed it, is a good piece of work. Lawrence would like to discuss these items by telephone, perhaps on Thursday, November 2nd. Sincerely, Henry Diamond. Okay, fine. Let's jump ahead just 2 months. February the 5th, 1996. Now, this letter is from Lawrence himself to Dr. Jack Gibbons. 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Dear Jack. This is an amazing letter. We appreciate your taking the time last week for our very productive telephone call. As always, your knowledge of the scientific and federal government scene is particularly useful to those of us trying to be helpful as citizens. As soon as the best evidence report, the report written by Don Berliner and coordinated by Marie Galbraith, which we have referred to as the Bootsy Report, is published, we will send you a copy. This report is an unusual combined effort of the three major UFO organizations. For those of you that don't know, it was at this time that MUFON, CUFOS, and FUFOR came together in coalition specifically to be part of this initiative and help create this report. Returning, we believe that it is quite factual and avoids sensationalism. We, of course, would be very much interested in your reaction. This report, by the way, eventually became the book UFO's Best Evidence by Don Berliner and Antonio Neyes. Very good book, very important book. Returning to the letter. As you suggested, we will ask those who worked on the report to put forward 2 or 3 names who might be candidates for a pilot project to assess the usefulness of the expanded amnesty program we have urged. We would hope, amnesty program. This is referring to Rockefeller's intention to ask the President to use a presidential directive to get amnesty to witnesses to come forward. That's how serious this is. Right? We hope that there could be a private public review of the effort coordinated by your office. And now comes this paragraph. Right? This is you know, the news. This is no news. There's no news here. No reporter would want to write about this. Where's the news here? No news. Returning. Your willingness to approach the Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, and NASA on this project is extremely important. We will await the results of this effort in order to add any significant findings to our proposed letter to the President. We will, of course, take into account the comments you made on the draft. It well may be that it will be timely to put this before the President late this year in order that it might receive attention in a second term. This is important because it shows that they intended to take this initiative into Clinton's second term after the '96 election. And then the final sentence. You indicated that you will keep the First Lady's office informed, and we shall as well. Jack, we know you have a great many day-to-day, short-term urgent problems which demand your limited time. So we are particularly grateful for the very responsive attention you are paying to our initiative. Sincerely, Lawrence Rockefeller, to John H. Gibbons, Ph.D., Assistant to the President for Science and Technology, Old Executive Office Building, 17th and Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C. I think your listeners are starting to get the picture by now.
Oh, yeah.
All right? And before I read the last document, here's what they need to do. They need to go to disclosurepetition.info, where they will find a direct link to the petition, as well as some useful information. Or they can go to whitehouse.gov and go to We the People and find a petition regarding the Rockefeller Initiative. They need to do three things. One, they need to click on the petition, and if they don't already have an account, if they already do and they've signed before, they should be able to sign it in about 2 seconds. If not, they have to create an account. Click on Create an Account. You will give your first and last name and your email address. They will publish your first name, last initial. If you want, you can add your city and state, city and country. Remember, anybody in the world can sign this petition if they have an email address. And just as in many other instances that we've all done, they get back an email from the White House instantly, immediately, with a verification link they have to click and a password they have to use to log back in and sign the petition. The site is twitchy. It doesn't work well with Chrome. Works a little better with Firefox. Works best with Internet. Sometimes you have to clear your cookies. They don't make it easy, but what can I say? But usually it goes smooth. Millions of people have signed. So we need people to go and do that and sign this petition. Then we need them to spread the link, the direct link, and particularly the link to disclosurepetition.info to 10, 20, 100, 300 other people. And then if you're really feeling rambunctious, use the feedback section at We the People and send a little respectful note to the White House saying, I've signed, this is important, we expect a proper response from the White House. Thank you very much. That's what we need you to do. If we can get enough people to do that, we will get 25K by March the 24th. We will get another response from the White House, and it's going to be very, very interesting. And now, I'll read this and I'll take any questions. I want to read to you the draft letter, a draft of the letter that Rockefeller had spent that time to get to the president. We don't have confirmation that he received a formal letter. He probably did. But we have not been able to obtain a copy of the formal letter from the Presidential Library. I say we, I mean Grant Cameron. But did he read this draft? Oh, yes. I think it's 99.9% that he read this draft at some point. And this draft is a beautiful 2-page letter. It has the key issues in it. It is well written. It is so ahead of its time. Remember, this is written and drafted as is point in early, well, it was written actually, put out in late 95. And I invite your listeners to listen carefully because if you can almost see the light at the end of the tunnel. Here is the letter to the President from Lawrence Rockefeller. Dear President Clinton, regarding lifting secrecy on information about extraterrestrial intelligence. Mr. President, let me say why I believe the above subject is so important. For some time, I have been interested in the possibility of expanding man's spiritual and intellectual potential. We must fulfill more of our human potential if we are to cope with the increasingly difficult problems which now challenge our quality of life and our very survival. In my view, to achieve this greater potential, it is essential to accelerate the recognition of a new paradigm of consciousness, which recognizes the oneness of mind, body, and spirit. Fine. One possible evidence of a new paradigm of consciousness would be the discovery of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Of course, we must continue to deal primarily with problems on our own planet. However, I have come to believe that the question of whether there is life elsewhere in the cosmos is of great significance. The implication for science, religion, and human potential are enormous. If life does exist elsewhere, we may learn much that will help us here. Your initiative to bringing greater openness to government through the current review of the classification of government documents to eliminate unnecessary secrecy offers a very significant opportunity to advance our knowledge of this question. This letter is to request that as part of this reassessment, you personally and specifically direct a review of current government information policy concerning extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI, including unidentified flying objects, UFOs. It is widely believed that various agencies of the federal government have substantial information concerning the existence or non-existence of UFOs, and that such information may have been unnecessarily withheld from the public as classified for reasons of national security. If this information does exist, and if it were released, it would be received as evidence of a new spirit of partnership between government and its citizens. The current classification review is a good step. However, Mr. President, from past experience, there is reason to believe that if there is information being held by federal agencies about ETI and UFOs, it will not be released in a meaningful way without your personal initiative. This is to urge you to expand and accelerate the important movement towards openness you have initiated. We suggest you consider the following steps be taken now. Direct the information about ETI and UFOs be given priority in the current classification review. Appoint a coordinator for government information about ETI and UFOs to bring together information from all federal agencies involved, such as the Department of Defense, the Air Force, NASA, the CIA, and other parts of the intelligence community. Your science advisor, Jack Gibbons, might well be the right person for this role. And 3, make it known through federal agencies, such as those named above, that credible witnesses having information about ETI or UFOs will be granted amnesty from relevant oaths or other government constraints. These steps, I respectfully suggest, would further not only the cause of scientific inquiry and knowledge, but also that of public confidence in government and international goodwill. The timing is particularly propitious because, as our first post-Cold War president, you have an opportunity to take this important step without many of the national security constraints that have limited government candor with the American people in the past. As an interested and concerned citizen, I stand ready to assist in whatever I can do that you might find useful. Sincerely, Lawrence S. Rockefeller, to the Honorable William J. Clinton, the President of the White House, Washington, D.C. And it included, and would have included attached, the Executive Summary on Unidentified Flying Objects Briefing Document, the best available evidence by Don Berliner with Mary Galbraith and Antonio Aeneas, presented by Kufos for MUFON, December 1995. So there you have it. Right? Bill Clinton could have been the disclosure president. He came under massive attack. He was bottled up and constrained. He was impeached. He stuck in the office. But because of his unfortunate personal failings, particularly with respect to abuse, I think, of his position, particularly with respect to Lewinsky, his ability to possibly pursue this was negated. And more importantly, he almost certainly, with that behavior, cost Al Gore the opportunity to be president and possibly be the disclosure president. Major history. Covered by the news? Not at all. Nothing. Nada. Zero. Nichevo. 9. Bupkis. However, this whole issue is now back to life. It sits on the White House website right now, waiting 25,000 signatures.
And I can't help but go back to a line in one of the letters you read before where it talked about how it would go a long way to making the American people trust the government, and that's something that's needed now.
And what's happened since this letter was written? Trust in government has plummeted to all-time lows.
Absolutely.
It's practically off the scale. It's down around 10% for Congress. Right now, the American people wouldn't pour water on Congress if they found it on fire. The political process has become rancid, useless, locked up, nasty, ugly, vile, offensive even. And yet, the election we're about to partake in, which has already been underway, the campaigns of which for 7 months, will be the most expensive election in the history of the human race by any country at any time, even adjusted for inflation in 2012. It's going to cost billions.
And
what will we get? Hard to say, but I don't think we'll get the truth, not without the public stepping forward. So we got anybody got any questions in your audience there?
Well, we can throw open the phone lines. We have about 10 minutes left in the show.
Let's go for it.
The numbers are 508-996-0500, 1-877-996-1420. You can post questions in the chat room on Spooky TV at SpookySouthcoast.com or email us, SpookyCrew@SpookySouthcoast.com.
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions that they've had in here, like a lot of people wanting to know who's watching over the people in the Freedom of Information Act, security people. Why aren't they being checked to see if double checked? Why aren't there more people looking in to see if there really are other documents, type of thing?
Well, more Freedom of Information Act requests have been made on the subject of UFOs than any other subject, period. And again, the government has total control over what it releases, and so overall they produced not much, but there have been some documents that have been useful. There have been some mistakes. There's also been a huge amount of redaction.
So it's a case I was going to say it's a case of the rat watching the cheese factory.
Well, it's just the case the government has. The act does not really put that much pressure on the government really to release anything it doesn't want to release. I mean, it's kind of a ruse. It makes you feel like you can get it, but you really can't. I mean, they'll release something they don't care, but if it's really important and they don't want it out, it ain't coming out. But people have tried. The part is that Grant Cameron got lucky. Maybe he didn't get lucky, but he scored a major hit in 2000. And let me just give you some background on this. The OSTP could have been under the Presidential Records Act, in which he couldn't have filed an FOI. It would have had to come out through the library years later. But for whatever reason, the OSTP was exempted from the Records Act and thus was accessible by FOIA. And he got those documents. And he got them in 2000. One of the first things Bush did when he came into office in 2001 was to shove the OSTP under the Presidential Records Act. Interesting. And then he passed a directive making it even harder to get stuff from the presidential libraries under that act. Interesting. One of the first things Obama did when he became president was to pull the OSTP back out from under. You see the little shell game that's being played here? But in any event, we've plenty of FOIs have been filed. So we've done the best we can. If the press wanted to jump into this and really push it, that would do the trick.
There is a question from our Facebook page from Meg wanting to know if there are plans to change the petition or maybe draft a future petition that would ask for the release of witness reports. And, again, you're limiting this Disclosure Petition II to try to get direct answers out of the government, but is it possible that somewhere down the line you will try to get them to release all the documents and all the information?
Well, I mean, that was stated in the first Disclosure Petition.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of danced around that.
Yeah, each of these petitions are being carefully crafted to drive the process forward, and their target is primarily the political media, the big shots, the big reporters, the editors, the papers, the networks, the cable stations, all that stuff. There probably will be a third petition. Whether or not this petition makes it to 25K or not, and it will be carefully thought through to, again, go after the White House statement of November the 4th that there's no evidence at all for any of this. And even more so, there's no evidence the government's hiding anything, which is the funniest part of that. I mean, that's really amusing. So, yeah, but I can't say at this point, and I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, the total focus is on this position. I mean, hundreds of hours have already been put into this.
Sure.
Everything that PRG can throw at it is being thrown at it. If you go to disclosurepetition.info and go to you can go look at a lot of the YouTube videos that have been generated already. They're out there promoting it. You can see some of the early media coverage. You can also see the interview schedule, PRG, which includes links to the archived interviews that have been done. Most of them are archived, and also the interviews that are coming up. And then there have been international press releases, numerous ones that have been sent out. More will go out. And, of course, PRG has a substantial Facebook presence, has 7 Facebook pages, and belongs to about 200 groups. These are being heavily posted. We're doing the best we can. On the day that the petition was launched, well, it wasn't an accident. I waited to launch the petition until I was slotted to be on Coast to Coast AM, Nori. Audience of several million. And so that was the day we launched the petition, and then I had a full hour to kind of get into it that night. What can I say? I mean, there were several million people listening to that show. I can't imagine why 200,000 of them wouldn't have been signing that petition immediately. They know more about this issue than probably any group in the world, but they haven't done so yet.
Well, hold on, and this might be a loaded question with only a couple minutes left here, but is it possible that 200,000 people did go onto the website and sign the petition, and something is keeping that from being the case?
No, because the signatures are put up there right away. So when you sign it and you go there, you just reload. It shows your signature right there at the top. So if people were doing that, they would have instantly known. There'd been complaints all over the place. The site has been difficult to deal with. It's never really worked totally smoothly. It's not like setting up an account with Time Warner Cable or AT&T or some of the big commercial accounts or Amazon. It's a huge project, millions of signatures, millions of petitions, and they have been tweaking that site off and on. And a lot of people have had problems, no question. We've gotten lots of complaints, but there have been millions of signatures. We know that it doesn't work well with the Chrome browser. It's not thrilled with the Firefox browser. It works best with Internet. We know that sometimes if you've logged in before or failed, you need to clear your cookies and go back in. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And while most people will be able to log in, sign it in a minute or two, some have problems. And all I can say is keep at it, keep trying. The truth takes a little bit of effort.
Right.
Lies, you'll get those for free.
Well, Steve Bassett is our guest tonight, and of course you can go to the website disclosurepetition.info. You can also follow along with all the information that comes out of paradigmresearchgroup.org. Both are linked up to spookysouthcoast.com as well. 4,927 signatures on the site right now. Let's get that up to 5,000 at least over the next few minutes as we go off the air. Steve, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully this reaches the 25,000. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep spreading the word.
I really appreciate it. Great interview, and I appreciate your support.
All right,
we'll talk again soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. That is Stephen Bassett, exopolitics activist, and you can check out his website again, paradigmresearchgroup.org, but the important site to go to is disclosurepetition.info. We're going to keep it up on spookysouthcoast.com until the March 24th deadline to get the 25,000 signatures. So spread the word, spread it on Twitter, spread it on Facebook. Tell everybody to sign it. It only takes a few seconds, and you'll be doing your part to help get this information out there. All right, we're going to have to go for tonight, but we'll be back next week when our guest will be Dr. Kirby Surprise. We're going to be talking about synchronicity, so I'm excited because that means I get to play my favorite police song of all time. So we'll be back then. So until next week, for Matt Moniz, for Matt Costa, for Chris Balzano, I'm Tim Weisberg, and we want you all to stay spooktacular.
Keep me going all day. My feet needed help. I was using a gel insole when I heard about the ProFoot 2-ounce Miracle insole.
Only the 2-ounce Miracle is made with custom-forming Vitafoam to keep your feet steady and comfortable. The 2-ounce Miracle insoles conform to the unique shape of your feet, just like custom orthotics.